The 1920s were a time of dazzling progress. Jazz filled the streets. Radios brought voices and music into homes. Skyscrapers stretched toward the sky, and Ford cars sped across new highways. People called it the Roaring Twenties, and for good reason. America was thriving. Factories were booming. Cities glittered with neon, and the stock market seemed like a golden ticket to riches. Everyone believed prosperity was permanent, but hidden beneath this glamour was a fragile foundation, a time bomb ticking silently toward disaster. At the heart of this boom was Wall Street. Millions of ordinary Americans, not just bankers or elites, were buying stocks. Farmers, school teachers, factory workers, everyone wanted a piece of the action. And why not? Stocks only seemed to go up. People were borrowing heavily to invest, a risky practice known as buying on margin. Imagine putting down just $10 to control a $100 stock. If prices rose, you made a fortune. But if they fell even slightly, you lost everything. It was a system built on greed, optimism, and dangerous illusions. Then came October 1929. The world would never forget it. On Black Thursday, panic gripped the market. Prices plunged. Phones rang off the hook, and brokers screamed for buyers who no longer existed. Crowds gathered outside the New York Stock Exchange, watching in silence as fortunes vanished. Newspapers captured the faces of men and women, stunned, pale, broken. And just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, Black Tuesday struck. Billions more evaporated. Families who thought they were secure were suddenly ruined. Generational wealth, gone in hours. But here's the truth. The stock market crash didn't cause the Great Depression alone. It was a spark that set fire to a system already built on instability. Banks had overextended themselves. Industries were producing more goods than people could afford. Farmers couldn't sell their crops. When the market collapsed, credit dried up. Banks failed. Businesses shuttered. Farmers lost their land. By 1933, unemployment in America had soared to 25%. That meant 1 in 4 workers, millions of people, were jobless, desperate, and without hope. The human suffering was staggering. Families lined up at soup kitchens, waiting hours for a single meal of bread and thin stew. Children went hungry. Fathers walked the streets all day, pretending to look for work, ashamed to admit there were no jobs left. Mothers skipped meals so their kids could eat. In cities across America, homeless camps sprang up, made of scrap wood and metal. People called them Hoovervilles, a bitter reference to President Herbert Hoover, who many blame for failing to act. Farmers faced their own nightmare. Prices for wheat, corn, and cotton collapsed. Some burned their crops because it cost more to harvest them than to sell them. Others lost their land entirely, swallowed by debt and foreclosure. In the Dust Bowl of the 1930s, nature added cruelty to misery. Massive dust storms swept across the plains, burying farms and forcing thousands of families to pack their belongings and head west in search of work that rarely existed. And yet, the Depression wasn't just an American tragedy. It became a global disaster. Europe, still weakened by the cost of World War I, plunged deeper into crisis. In Germany, economic desperation created fertile ground for Adolf Hitler's rise to power, a decision that would ultimately lead to the deadliest conflict in human history. In Britain, industry slowed to a crawl. In Asia, trade collapsed. The Depression was not confined to one nation. It spread like a virus across the world, proving how interconnected economies truly were. Even nearly a century ago. Still, out of this darkness, resilience emerged. Communities came together to share what little they had. Neighbors looked out for each other. Churches and charities set up soup lines. Families held on to the smallest sources of joy, music, laughter, and faith that tomorrow might be better. In the United States, the government under President Franklin D. Roosevelt finally stepped in. His New Deal created jobs, built infrastructure, and reformed banks. Slowly, painfully, confidence returned. But the truth is sobering. It wasn't until World War II, when factories roared back to life to build weapons, ships, and planes, that the Great Depression finally ended. Now, here's where the past meets the present. Because the Great Depression is not just history, it's a mirror. Think about it. In 1929, millions borrowed money to chase profits in the stock market. In 2008, millions borrowed to buy houses they couldn't afford. In 2023, speculation shifted to cryptocurrencies, tech stocks, and risky investments once again. The illusion of this time it's different has tricked people before, and it may trick us again. So we have to ask, could another Great Depression happen today? Economists argue, no, safeguards are stronger now. We have deposit insurance, central banks, and government safety nets. But look closer. Global debt is at record highs. Markets rise and fall on fragile confidence. Inflation eats away at savings. Entire nations depend on supply chains that can collapse overnight. One major shock, another financial bubble, a geopolitical crisis, or a global pandemic could send the system crashing down. Just like in 1929, all it takes is one spark. The Great Depression reminds us that prosperity can vanish in the blink of an eye. It shows us the danger of greed, overconfidence, and fragile financial systems. But it also reveals something more powerful, the strength of resilience, courage, and unity. When everything collapsed, people still found ways to survive, to help one another, and to rebuild. And that is the final lesson. History is not just about the past. It is a warning. The Great Depression teaches us that while collapse is always possible, recovery is always possible too. What matters is how we respond when the world begins to crumble. So next time you hear about market bubbles, soaring debt, or economic booms, remember the breadlines of the 1930s. Remember how quickly the Roaring Twenties turned into the silent streets of the Great Depression. And remember that the difference between stability and collapse often lies in the choices we make today. Because history has already shown us what happens when money dies. The only question is, have we learned enough to stop it from happening again?